naked willpower.
Yeah, guys, welcome to Off Track with Inge and Rossi. 100 Days Recap, Episode 2. I mean, I don't want to just dive straight. I don't want to give away the plot twist by going right to that point, Tim. But we will get there.
I was not super thrilled with the start of season 2 of 100 Days to Indy on episode 1. I know I was probably in the minority with you two. I was in the minority with you two, but I loved episode 2. I thought episode 2 had some drama, had some cool storylines to follow. It obviously had Pato eating more guacamole in a sick house in Mexico.
And salsa.
And salsa. I really enjoyed it. I thought it captured kind of the essence of IndyCar and how cool it is and the characters and stuff. And I was happy about it. So well done, team.
Let's kick off with chronological. I agree. It was a really good episode. We start off in Punta Mita in Mexico, where Pato doesn't live but wants to live. Like he said in the show, I don't actually have a house because I travel so much. Is that true? Does Pato not have a home officially?
I mean, that's not true at all. He has a very nice home in Carmel. he has a family. I think what he meant is he doesn't consider any place home because he bounces around so much, but he has many houses.
Right.
I will say
he has a residence.
Punta Mita, he has multiple. He doesn't actually own anything in Punta Mita.
Okay.
He Airbnbs the same home often.
Okay.
Okay, so it feels like my takeaway here is he might not be the best with money.
Well,
because he has a lot of different places.
Let's just say he didn't go to the Marco Andretti school of owning a jet and making money.
Okay,
right.
That's fair.
Right. Yes.
Which Marco's one of the few people that has done that.
I do like
Correct.
though, you're like, yeah, he's got multiple homes, but he has to rent down in Mexico when he goes on vacation because he hasn't evidently bought somewhere in a place he wants to actually spend time.
I think there's family homes in Mexico, but obviously when you want to go chill, you don't necessarily always want to be with family, which I understand.
100%. I actually really liked kind of getting to hear from him a little bit behind the scenes. He's just such a fun personality, right? Like he's one of the best characters for this show because he gives, fewer F words than the average person in this business, which is great. It's refreshing, right? But then at the same time, I liked when he was sort of acknowledging Pelot's, dominance last year and that like he's the guy to beat this year. And, he says something like, how do you even compete with that? A guy whose worst finish was 8th and we had 3 DNFs. And I think that shows some self-awareness that's really important, I think, for athletes to be able to acknowledge when somebody's doing something well. It's like, okay, how do we get to that point?
Yeah. The one thing that I find very interesting and while it's not wrong, it's certainly a perception that I think we as an organization need to address. So it was referenced in this show and it was referenced by a bunch of journalists. And I think it was even referenced by you, James, like, Aaron McLaren is expected to do X, Y, and Z because they've got the biggest budget in the series and there's no excuses and all this stuff. And while I'm not at all saying financially the team struggles, but what I think people need to realize is that ultimately the McLaren name had full control over the organization that used to be Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports as of 2023. And just because you have budget for 2023 and 2024, Andretti, Ganassi, and Penske have had budget for a decade plus, right? So yes, while you can spend money
for sure
in a year and a half, 2-year time span, that doesn't mean that you're going to just have the people, have the experience, have the knowledge, because no fault to them. This is still the majority of the people is still Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, right? I mean, you know this, James, like The staff
sure.
hasn't really changed. Management has changed a little bit, but the people who make cars go faster are the same. So yes, they have access to more resources, more budget, more tools, but that's not an overnight recipe for success.
No, money does not solve problems instantly in motorsports, right? It takes time to build up the infrastructure, build up the processes, and kind of see the results. I think some of that narrative, though, comes from the fact that, like, Zach himself, when interviewed in the show, says we're here to win races and compete for championships. So it's
100%.
Yes, it's a little bit
like
public
that
perception, but it's also like what you guys are there to do.
No, without a doubt. But I think there's kind of this tone that it's like, man, they're running out of excuses. And it's like, well, yeah, I hear you, because Pato and the 5 car for the past 3 or 4 years.
That's my line.
Right. For the last 3 or 4 years has been the guy knocking on the door and all of this stuff. But like, again, no one has touched Ganassi or Penske. Like, Andretti is running out of excuses in my mind. And then this is not saying anything against them because I used to drive for them or whatever, but like, no. They're the ones that I think are out of time. We still have, we're still getting the locomotive going here. Like the wheels are still in motion to get to the level to match the budget.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about that. Like, if you're going to build it the right way, the only way to do it correctly is to take your time and do it right.
For sure.
Like, there's not an easy, there's no shortcut to do it.
There's not even another way to do it. There's no like
unless
fast.
you can poach Newey. I hear he's available.
He
Just
is
back
evidently
the Brinks truck up.
He is available. But like honestly, to that point too, Alex, if he can still hear us, one of the things that I like kind of clocked when I was watching that is when they take a tour around the shop, right? Like, I know that shop well. I knew it under its previous management. It is crazy to me to see what that place looks like now, because they have had to shoehorn so much and so many people into it. Like, that team has outgrown that shop 3 years ago. And so it's like actually very impressive that you guys have managed to keep the thing running out of that place. Because when I saw it, I was floored what it looked like, how much stuff was in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. We now, I mean, there's the idea to get a shipping container, right, and put it in the parking lot and make offices out of it. Like, that's how desperate we are for like desk space.
I thought, at least for next season, didn't you guys buy the soon to be old Andretti headquarters?
Yes, but again, you know, that's not an overnight thing. Like, great, you own a building now, but it's not a small process to move into a building and to get all of the machines and everything, infrastructure up and running. Anyways, back to 100 days.
So part of the reason
willpower.
No, we're not there yet.
I have a note because I wanted to like keep track of things. So I was writing down stuff that I wanted to talk about. It just says Alex slamming the trunk and Will's hanging out.
Yeah.
So.
I also made notes, and I also had what's in the box and Will's. But hold on, we're not doing this chronologically, because from here in the show we then go, we get some one-on-one time with Pelot, and I learned something. I learned that
about
bamboo leather
pajamas?
is actually the hot ticket. So, you know, Alex, are you taking note? Will or Tim, did you know this? Was Hazel decked out in bamboo leather clothes?
No, because Hazel's dad's not an IndyCar champion.
Well,
You know, I'm
that's
buying
maybe
whatever,
something you should work on.
know.
I don't feel like they sell that at Target.
Yeah. Which is when I'm getting the nice stuff for Hazel, is when we go to Target.
I did definitely relate to the whole, like, I think we have enough baby clothes. My wife thinks we don't have enough baby clothes, so I'm shopping for baby clothes. That's just kind of how that goes.
It is, yeah. It's nice to see some things are just eternal.
Dude,
Is that the right word? I don't know. You guys got me up at 4:30 a.m. to do this. I'm not a big words guy this early.
Deal with it. So the other thing that I thought, like, it was just wild, man, like, because they kind of recapped his 2023 season in like a montage. And obviously we know he had a good season, but when you just watch like a 30-second recap of how many races he won, it's baffling, man. Like, that is not something you see often in this sport. And when you see it all condensed into 30 seconds, it was wild.
Alex, have you ever thought about doing something like that?
You're such a.
I have, man. It looks pretty cool. It looks pretty neat. Like I would like to do that. That sounds fun. Success.
You should think about it. Part of what I think made it so compelling as an episode was just like it really did what we talked about the last time. Like it went in and showed stuff that you didn't see. Like the last one was, I mean, you guys saw. The last one was a recap of St. Pete if you watch St. Pete. This was, hey, here's stuff. Even if you were watching Thermal, even if you were a fan of IndyCar at this point, you may have missed this. You didn't get to hear these perspectives. You didn't get to hear about this drama. You didn't get to like get this behind the scenes. And also I think Pato was just made for reality TV.
Couldn't agree more.
He's just.
He does love it.
It just works.
We need to get him on like The Bachelor or something.
Well, he'd be a better option than Connor.
I would be a better option than Connor.
Yeah. It is kind of funny to watch these episodes though when they're behind, because you talk about some of the points that he makes in terms of like, oh, we got to really make sure that our worst day is still better than Pelot's worst day. And it's just like, I wonder what episode 4 is going to be like. Episode 3 is going to be like, it's interesting to watch things retroactively. Is that the right adjective? It makes us all,
right term.
Myself included, it makes myself included look really dumb because you have all of these grandiose visions of what you want it to be. And then reality hits and you're like, oh,
yeah. Welcome to motorsports, right? You got your plan A, and that's rarely how it goes by the time, you get there. But the other thing that I found fascinating was when they were doing that kind of recap of Pelot's 500 and they re-show, the pit lane incident, and then they have his radio. And like, we've talked about it on here. We've talked about it on the broadcast a lot, like how nothing seems to really phase Pelot. He's like unflappable. And the guy's leading the 500 from pole, right? And gets taken out in pit lane. And he's parked up against pit wall, car stopped, wings damaged, race essentially over, right? And he gets on the radio and he goes, what was he doing, man? And I'm like, dude, I looked over at Becky and I was like, I would have been like, I don't know, like my radio would have blown out. I would have been screaming so aggressively. I would have been so pissed. We've seen how angry you can get at the 500 when things go wrong. Like, I don't know another driver. And I was sort of like, because then later in the episode, there was a great sort of juxtaposition because you had Grosjean's radio after he gets taken out in turn 1 at Thermal, right? So he gets taken out. No, this is not a shot at Grosjean at all, right? He was taken out from 7th at a non-points race, and his radio was what you'd expect. What the blah, 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 beep, 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 blah, blah, blah. And then you get Pelot taken out of the 500. He's like, man, what was he doing? And I'm like, dude, that guy's like, I don't know. He's a stone cold killer, man. Like that guy, I'm not sure he's alive entirely.
Okay. I can't tell if Alex just doesn't want to add anything to the conversation or if he's frozen.
Well, no, I just heard the end of what James said, and I agree because I get very pissed. I mean, I kind of have two speeds. I'm like, this is a joke and I'm just annoyed, so I'm not going to say anything, or I'm going to try to have a sense of humor about it, or I don't really care, so it is what it is, or I'm irate. Like that's my thing. And in the 500, if something like that happened to me, I think I would have gotten out of the car and pulled Renus out by his neck myself, and then potentially gotten back in. So
that's what we want to hear. That was because actually, to your credit, actually, when we're recording this, I know we're talking about the show, but we just, Barber was the last race. Your radio from Barber when your race came unglued, when your wheel fell off, was left rear tire's not on. Like it was very just sort of calm and matter of fact, and that same sort of thing. So what? So sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, it is funny. Like there are very distinct personalities on your like in-car radios. Like every driver is has a completely unique thing, and it's not always correlated to their personalities outside of the car. Like
sure.
I feel like I've always said this to people who are getting into the sport who want to like listen to the onboards during a race. It's like you can't hold a driver accountable for the they say in the middle of a race.
Yeah,
like they have to be. I always think you guys have to be completely comfortable saying whatever you need to say in there.
Right.
Well, James is the epitome of that because he's the most, eloquent person and, tries to look at things from a big picture and tries to see everyone's side of the story and is the nice guy, right? Like right now. And then he puts a helmet on. And he's like,
rage machine.
Yeah. So anyways, Will Powers.
I've definitely had those moments. Yeah. Well, no, we got to start with what was in the box. What did you just destroy when you were slamming the trunk shut?
That's just how Alex
stuff.
closes trunks. That's what I wanted to talk about.
It was Pato's merch. Like, I don't care.
Ah, okay.
Right.
So, Will,
Right.
Let's
gotta
get to
think.
the important stuff.
That's an occupational hazard of letting a film crew. Like, that's what I was thinking about. I'm like, hang on a minute. That meant there was a group of people with cameras in his bedroom when he woke up. That's super
So
weird.
either he slept in a position that they had the ability to get in, or they stayed over.
No.
Like, did they have a slumber party? Or he got out of bed, let him in, and then got back in bed.
That's what happened, which means was his out when he opened the door to let them in?
You have to assume it was the whole time, in which case they just didn't tell him.
No, exactly right. They wouldn't do that to him. What it is, when you wear those loose boxers to bed that have the flap, all it takes is one little roll around in the wrong direction and things happen.
But he didn't.
It's just
But he would have gotten out of bed to go to the door and then gotten back into bed. He wasn't tossing and turning, going back to sleep. I find it hard to believe that it popped out while he was sitting there.
Man, you don't know what kind of weight he's working with. You just don't know.
That's a great point. I've never
things
had
might
that
have a
problem,
mind of
but
its
that's
own,
also because, I don't have a snake. So.
Same.
Apparently he doesn't sleep as cold as you do, Alex.
I just love how season 1 is Joseph's abs and then season 2 is Will's dink-a-dink. This is just not the Penske image that I imagined. Yeah.
Season 3, Ed Carpenter is going to get a colonoscopy. Like
It's got to be Scotty Max. We got to keep the Penske connection going. But my thing is, like, because it was like staged, sort of, right? Like he had to open the door, let the man get back into bed, whatever. Why not just redo it once his was hanging out? Like, hey, Will, why don't you get back? We'll just do that one from the top.
Will was probably like, nah, keep it in. It's funny.
Keep it. Yeah.
So that was going to be my question. Like you guys always say, he does have a pretty wicked sense of humor. I imagine he didn't intentionally take his out, but that was going to be my follow up. Is you have to assume they didn't reshoot it because he thought it was funny.
Exactly. 100%.
Dude, Will. So like sidebar story about Will's obsession with genitalia. When we did Family Feud, right? There was one question.
I was so hungover that day.
Well, so just normal day. But one of the questions was like, on King Kong, this is like an oversized body part. And so fingers, arms, head, whatever.
I can't think of anything other than for the
answer. Well, so that is like legitimately the answer that Will gave. And so we're all sitting there like, oh my God. Steve Harvey's like, is it on the board? And it flips over, King Kong's ding dong.
So he was right.
So good, man. It was so good. He was bang on, man. He had like 3 different jokes in that show, and they all landed. They were all on the board. It was unbelievable.
So, are we excited for next week's episode? How do we think they're gonna? Or are we just nervous that it's gonna be rehashing the same stuff we've been covering or talking about in IndyCar for the last few weeks?
It won't yet because it'll be Long Beach, right?
Yeah, but isn't Long Beach going to then rehash?
No. No.
You don't think so? You think they're going to wait till episode 4 to cover the St. Pete stuff?
Well, you have to chronologically.
Yeah,
So
'cause it
I
didn't
think
happen
that
yet, right?
I mean, they discovered it at Long Beach. They could do Long Beach and then right after.
Well, I've seen the paragraphs. It doesn't come out till episode 4, Tim. So shut up. Stop trying to predict the future. Okay. I'm pumped for episode 3. You know, I think we've got some very interesting storylines. I think the character development is cool. I think I know what happens in Long Beach, and I'm just pumped to see how they carry it on. Like I like how they interjected kind of Scotty Mack in Thermal, even though he wasn't featured. Like I like how I think that this was a preview of Will in a way. Like I just the storyline, the progression. Like I was
a preview.
Involved for 40
what didn't
minutes.
we see of Will?
I agree completely, man. And like what I'm excited about is the first 2 races, like from an on-track standpoint, were kind of boring. Like there wasn't a lot of excitement on track. And I know that the show's not as much about that. Like it obviously is a nice mix of off track and on, but the next 2 races on track were both bangers, right? So I'm excited about, sure, there's going to be the off track drama that's going to get covered, but there's also some really good racing happening. And we've got different winners in every race so far. But you brought up a point about Scotty Mack. I loved how they had him mic'd up watching the race.
Yes, it was awesome.
The heat.
Very cool.
And so it was great, man. His commentary was brilliant. But my question, he was like, so they're showing all that scrap of you, Pato, Callum, all the McLaren guys trying to get that last transfer spot. And he's like, oh, this is awesome, man. $100 says they're all smiling right now. Were you smiling?
Yeah, were you?
Yeah, in those like 2.5 laps, 3 laps, like it was a lot. It was fun. Like you were stressed because it was your teammates, but like you were,
right.
It was everything you could do because like you still had the goodness of the tires, and all 3 of us had overtake, and like the rotation was changing kind of every 5 or 6 corners. So like it was intense because you were like really trying not to hit them or push them off or anything, but like it was very enjoyable, especially because I beat them both. So, you know.
Yeah, because of the end result, it was that much better.
Right.
Pato
all right, did not have fun.
I just want to. No, he did not. I think his quote was "this" at the end. But I just want to. I want to end quick on Palou because he wins. Obviously, he wins the cash. They covered the whole contract dispute a little bit, which is kind of interesting to see, a little bit of back and forth between the 2 sides on that. But then he makes a comment. He's like, yeah, no one would get into motorsports for the money. It's the cherry on top. And then his description of he's like, yeah, no, the money's just the cherry on top. And you don't get the cake for the cherry, but the cherry's delicious and you're going to eat the cherry. But what you really go for is the cake, and the cherry's just extra. But I'm really here for the cake. It's like, no, man, we know how the saying goes. We understand the meaning behind cherry on top.
Nobody needed that one explained it. Yeah.
But it was so adorable. Like the way he described it was like the sweetest thing ever. I don't know why.
Right.
It was just
My
so
full
adorable.
takeaway is that was somebody who spent the entirety of that day talking to an infant. And then it's like he's been doing like baby stuff and then immediately they're like, hey, here's a camera in your face, time to talk. And it's like, okay, well, I'm still in that mode.
Time to talk, and he just holds up a set of keys and shakes it in front of the lens. Yeah.
Hi, Patrick. Today we're going to learn colors.
The other thing that was funny was when Zach sits down, right? He's in the room and they're like, so if we say Alex Palou, what word, comes to mind? And the pause that he has, because the things that he wants to say, this internal debate of like, okay, I really want to say this. I know I'm not allowed to say that. It was hilarious because like, I know the words that he uses. And so I was waiting for it. And then he took the very PC approach, which was probably the right thing to do.
Probably the right. Yeah. It's like what one word comes to mind. And then he pauses for 5 seconds, laughs, and then
like
gives
20 seconds.
a 5-minute explanation of, like, here's why I can't say the word that I want to say.
Yeah.
I was actually surprised how candid he was given this situation. So, well, all right.
That's Zach, man.
Fun episode.
It was good. All right. I look forward to episode 3. And this is on Monday. This is airing. So, Alex, I hope that we're currently celebrating some money hauled in from your nameless horse on the weekend. Is it Friday?
Poor
I've got to
dog.
wear pink. Is that right?
Tomorrow, you need to wear pink. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, guys, thanks for tuning in, both to the show and the show. If you're listening to the
shows,
podcast,
if you will.
check out the video on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Guys, we have 2,500 subscribers on YouTube, which I didn't know that we had. I just checked our first video. I'm like, oh, wow, there's like people on
Well,
this.
that's because we used to put videos out like a year and a half
but
ago.
like we put a really short kind of, I mean, they were okay. Some of those videos were pretty funny. But yeah, no,
Butt
that's it.
chug and sunlight.
Keep
Chug and
it,
sunlight,
God,
bro.
let's keep it growing, guys.